You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 116. And now, here are Jeff, Heather, Craig, and Ian.
Hello again, and welcome to episode 116 of the Tricorder Transmissions original mission. Tonight we're going to be looking for essential Trek moments in the 10th episode of the animated series Mud's Passion. I am Jeff Hewlett, and here with me in the studio are two of our Tricorder Transmissions hosts. First up, you know her from our Shore Leave series. She's been secretly lobbying the next Trek film to be a Disney triple crossover. It's the wonderful Heather Barker.
I would never, ever wish that upon anyone.
Really? Captain Mickey and the Tribbles?
Oh my God, no, that's sacrilege.
We might see Star Wars and Disney get merged in a film someday, so why not Star Trek?
No.
Oh. And also with us is the soon-to-be seafaring co-host of our Gold Key Comics series, Mr. Ian Adams.
Hello.
How's it going?
Not too bad. Good to talk with you guys again.
Yeah, good to talk to you too. And it's a little break from the comics that we've been doing for a while, so nice to jump back to the animated series.
Yeah, and what an episode.
Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So just before we get there, though, quick reminder to the listeners who've been with us for a while. This is, again, a bit of a format change from our past commentary track episodes. We've opened up the essential voting to all of our Tricorder series hosts and added this discussion bit at the beginning of the episode, and our normal commentary track will follow with Craig Cohen just a little bit later. So hang on in there for that one. So as I said, we're talking about Mud's Passion, which is the 10th episode of the animated series, written by Stephen Kandel, who actually wrote the previous two Mud episodes, Mud's Women and I, Mud, as well as another animated series episode coming up a little later called The Jihad. And while this episode does mark the last time we see the Mud character on screen, fear not, intrepid listeners, that Ian and I will be encountering him once more when we get to issue 61 of Gold Key Comics, Operation Con Game. I know Ian's looking forward to that one.
Indeed.
Yeah. I think that might be the final Gold Key as well. I think that might be
61 is.
Yeah, so that's the end. Yeah, the mythic unreleased one, I think was going to be 62, but never wound up materializing. Kind of fun fact, though, about the Mud character that is, I found kind of funny in some of my research, is that he appears in far more novels and comics than he does on television series. So he's in 3 novels, 5 DC comics, and most recently one of the John Byrne photo novels made out of Mud, which actually should interest Heather because it also features Tribbles.
Oh, yay, Tribbles.
Yeah. So maybe we'll hit that maybe way down in the future when we get that far. But so this is actually a direct continuation of the prior I, Mud episode. I don't know, was anybody else kind of disappointed that they wrote another kind of love potion money-making scheme for Mud? Did you guys think that it was kind of a bit of a rehash, or did you take it more as an homage to Mud's Women? What did you think, Heather?
I'd say it's more of just an homage to what he is and what he does. I mean, he's nothing really special, guys.
It's funny you say that, because I remember contributor to the show from a long time ago, Chris Ritzer, was a very anti-Mud, and anytime we talked about Mud, he was just absolutely beside himself. Ian, do you think it was a rehash, more of an homage? How did you take it?
Yeah, it used so many of the same, sort of story elements. I guess let me back up, because it actually introduced a whole lot of things that you definitely never saw in other Mud shows, but the premise of a love potion was definitely a rehash. Like they could have gone with something else as the sort of MacGuffin of the episode, I thought, and
Yeah.
then it would have felt fresh, like completely. But Mud was he was a really really popular character for some reason, probably because of George Carmel or Roger Carmel, sorry, who did play him quite well. And one thing just to note about this episode that I always thought was curious was that Roger Carmel voiced Mud in this, just as he had played him in the TOS Mud episodes, but he wasn't actually credited, which I thought was always really weird.
Oh,
Yeah, I always wondered why they did that.
Because they credited the returning actors in prior TAS episodes, didn't they?
Yeah.
I swore they did. Well, after the events of iMud, I had expected him to aim a little bit higher with his next scam, especially after escaping from the android planet. He seemed to be. The last one, his ambitions were a lot higher, kind of aiming to have his own, planet of androids to do with as he wished. But now he's backpedaling love potions to minors.
it didn't work out, so he had to go back to doing what he does well.
Kind of like Han
Right.
Solo, huh? In The Force Awakens. He's like, yeah, well, went back to smuggling. What the hell?
I thought it was kind of interesting. The love potion kind of reminded me of the original screenplay for City on the Edge.
Right.
And how they were peddling the little jewel drugs.
That was a good point. Yeah, and that was the script that they shot down and re-edited to take the drugs out.
Yeah.
They didn't want them on television. I guess things had changed by the time the animated series rolled around and drugs weren't. And this was supposedly aimed at kids too, right? So why would they be okay with drugs in this?
Aimed at kids, but not written for kids.
Yeah, I mean that's just a consequence of the time slot, but I think as far as drug use being communicated to kids, like it still ended up with a kind of drugs are bad message, right? Like by the end, when everyone's got the hangover and everything.
Oh yeah. Or they turn hateful afterwards. So
Right.
it has a definite downside after the upside. So
Yeah.
you go through a little bit of a withdrawal afterwards. But they don't make any notes about having to retake it or how the effect of it on the person you use it on changes them over time. I guess you'd probably have to keep reapplying it to them if you wanted them to keep loving you.
Right. For
Yeah.
a tidy profit, I'm sure.
Once again, show's too short to put in all that pertinent information.
That's true. The short format definitely does cut out a little bit of the exposition that we were expecting, or at least I was expecting to get. I had so many lingering questions though from this one. Like, again, this isn't something that I've seen in Trek episodes, especially TOS, and we've seen this actually. Ian and I we've discussed this in some of the Gold Key issues as well. Is the Federation sending its flagship and arguably the best crew that they have in search of one guy? I mean,
Right.
and was Harry Mudd really like a fugitive? Was he officially a Federation fugitive? And they make specific mention that he's on a planet where Federation law isn't observed in this episode. So the Federation sends Kirk out to a planet that is not part of the Federation to arrest one guy who's just kind of doing petty con games. It's not like it's a Klingon invasion of the planet or something they're going to stop.
That is kind of interesting because you have to wonder what kind of like international law or what the equivalent is, right?
Or maritime law.
Yeah. Like, so are they able to still, pursue criminals in like unaligned space or is it, was the whole thing just kind of a boondoggle for the Enterprise?
Yeah. Who knows? Oh, and does the Prime Directive apply at all here?
Guys, we can throw these questions out the window with the animated series.
I know, but they're so fun to talk about. I mean, and Spock cutting a large swath in the ground to separate the miners from Mud to save him. That seems very extreme. I just thought that it was very strange that they would go out of their way to mention that it's the Federation law doesn't apply there, yet the Enterprise crew feels perfectly okay to make an arrest of Mud on that planet.
Maybe it's so lawless there because, as he said, they're heavy metal miners, so they're just too metal for the law.
Oh, I see what you did there. A little too metal. Some pretty cool looking aliens there, though.
Yeah, the Ursinoids.
Yeah, it's always fun with the animated series to get to see these kinds of things. I thought about Star Trek Beyond when I watched this, and how we see the little Kevins. And to me, I'm like I don't know. I have issue with the Kevins because they're just kind of, I don't know. We haven't seen Kevins before, right? There's something kind of different from most of the aliens we've seen. And so that's what I think about with the animated series is how these are all, very different aliens that we've never seen. And so I'm like, okay.
And we'll never see again.
Yeah.
At least I don't think we do.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't recall seeing any of these guys again in the future. There's some similar looking ones though, but they're all humanoid. These guys are humanoid, bipedal, humanoid. I thought that was cool. They had a speaking role for them too.
Yeah, I kind of thought that they were like Planet of the Apes at first.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Yeah,
With the art, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool because of the Planet of the Apes Star Trek crossover. And then I was like, oh no, they're like wolfmen or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, there was one other one that was kind of in the background there next to the Wolfman. He looked kind of like a raisin, sort of shriveled up face.
Maybe it was one of the California raisins.
Oh, that's what happened to them after the 80s. They wound up being space miners. Oh, man.
I heard it through the space vine.
Oh, my God.
Groan worthy.
Like the corniest tricorder moment ever here.
Well, I kind of felt bad, though, for Heather for this episode, because I know how much you enjoy the cool artwork and scenery on some of the planets that we've seen in prior episodes, and this one really didn't have much of that at all. It was mostly ship interiors.
Yeah, I did like seeing the planet. It's pretty cool, nice and yellow, bright. And, unfortunately, I think I mentioned before that with the new Netflix update for iPhone, I can no longer do screenshots.
No,
that's right.
Yeah, while I watch it. So I would take screenshots and then turn them into my wallpaper or, tweet about them or whatever. And now I can't, so I'm sad. But I did really like the planets. And there was just that one scene, I guess, where they showed was at the beginning, like the cityscape.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. So, I mean, but it was very lacking in that part.
But I was just also about to comment that I love how his stage has looks like stacks of gold bars.
Yeah. Is that a traveling stage that he brings with him? Is he like a real snake oil salesman with a wagon? And
yeah.
They really seem to be playing to that aspect in this episode, like with all the little faces he was making and just making him very deplorable overall.
Yeah, there were several, look at the camera moments for Mud, and it's like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge sort of.
They were creepy
with the audience. They were a little bit weird. Like I think that Mud in this episode, the animated version of Mud, did not play as well as the live action.
Yeah,
Roger C. Carmel Mud. I don't think it translated to the animated series as well as it could have. The voice was great. It was nice that you had the same inflections and the same reads, but just the way that they drew him, especially around the mouth and the way his face moved when he talked, was a little bit strange. Did you pick up on that, Ian?
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of that actually has to do with just the low quality animation that they were working with, which I mean that in technical terms, right? Very low frames per second, try to do as minimal, movements as possible, like only moving, little bits of his eyes or his mouth and stuff like that. And I think when you watch the Mud episodes of the original series, so much of what makes Carmel's performance as Mud memorable is the really sort of subtle characterizations that he does, like, just with his body language and facial expressions and stuff like that. And just because of the format that it was working with, none of that was able to be played.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
He was just a super creep, basically.
Yep.
In the animated version.
Yeah, I think the live action version at least had some bit of charm to him. He wasn't exactly, the most likable character in the world, but he still had some sort of a charm where you could sort of see his side and root for him a little bit.
Also with the animal trafficking, the what was it, Rigelian hypnoid?
Yeah, the Rigelian hypnoid. Yeah, the shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Question for you guys. Speaking of the shapeshifter, what setting was Spock's phaser on? Does the phaser have a delete shapeshift setting or a shift you back setting? Because if it was stun, why would the thing just walk away? And if it was kill, it would have been vaporized. So what setting was it on?
It was set to annoy.
Mild sensation. But like I said before, this is absolutely a direct continuation of Mudd's adventure after Mudd, and not only was it written that way, but it was written by the same guy. So I mean, all the points of reference were there. I was a little bit curious what you guys thought about. They kind of glossed through it just a little bit of how Mudd got out of that scenario on the robot planet. And Kirk actually brings up the fact that he remembers leaving him on that planet full of androids, and pretty much the escape plan was steal a ship. Right. I thought there was a really good opportunity here for him to have a little bit more of an adventurous escape. Heather, were you let down a little bit by that? Were you hoping for maybe more of an Indiana Jones type daring escape?
No, it was exactly what I thought he would do. I mean, really, you couldn't really let me down anymore with the episode to begin with. So
Heather's flipping her cards.
Yeah, no. I was just like, oh, really? Okay, haha. The end. I don't have much more to say about it than that.
Okay, Ian, any headcanon here?
Like, why didn't he just take apart all of the robots and use them to build a spaceship? I mean,
it's an interesting looking spaceship.
Like, that's basically, or maybe even in the episode where he was on the android planet, wasn't there some kind of big manufacturing base that would, essentially just pump out the robots?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certain models, and they could just crank out tons of them.
Yeah, so maybe that he could have used, to build it. Like, I would have just somehow expected him to build some sort of janky escape craft, and then find himself on some planet, that just happened to be along the course, and then from there, the more traditional steal a ship. Because that was the thing about that planet, right? Was that nobody ever went there. Right. If people went there, then it probably wouldn't have been Mudd who built the android army. Yeah,
that's entirely true. I was kind of hoping for more of a reversal where Mudd could wind up talking his way out of it, and maybe convincing the androids back onto his side and having them help him escape. That sounds like more of a Muddish. That's how he got into it in the first place. I was kind of hoping for more of maybe he would show up with a few of them, as his minions or something, or maybe they'd be involved in his schemes and helping to make all kinds of money selling drugs.
All wearing black turtlenecks with the word henchman written across the
Yes, very, very Batman 66. One thing I found really strange, and this stuck out to me immediately when they were talking about, Mudd was giving a description of the love crystals and how they worked, especially when it came to the types of people who were using them on each other. And it felt to me like it was written specifically to exclude gay and lesbian use. In fact, he says flat out that if you use it on the same sex, you become friends. But if you use it on the opposite sex, love, in his own words. And, for a show that had a history of pushing the envelope, and I understand this is a cartoon version of it that was aired on Saturday mornings, I thought it was really interesting that they chose to actually call that out instead of just glossing over it completely. Heather, did it stick out to you?
I noticed it, but I really wouldn't have expected them to go the other way. Honestly, at that point in time, it just wasn't something Star Trek was doing. And I think that might have been network demand type stuff. I mean, the episodes have been kind of wacky, but it's just not something that I would expect from the animated series. Star Trek Discovery, yeah.
Well, the question I would have liked to have asked the writer of the episode is that why they actually included the part about using it on the same sex person and to begin with. I mean, it seems like they specifically put it in there, but it seems like something could have easily just left out and kids wouldn't even have thought about it at the time. Ian, what do you think?
I'm totally with Heather that I'm sure it was just a matter of like the culture at the time. And when was this, like 72 when this was,
I think it was
made?
3 or 4,
maybe 73. Yeah.
Yeah, 73.
You know, where like the culture in general and in particular, television networks would have gone out of their way to not even acknowledge the existence of anything other than like heteronormative, lifestyles. So that part didn't surprise me, but I do wonder, like part of me wonders, because they had to have been aware of like the whole, slash fiction with Kirk and Spock, and then there's that scene later on where they beam down to the planet, and I'm wondering if it was to kind of preemptively be like no, this is not the Kirk Spock slash episode. You know what I mean,
yeah.
That they did that to sort of guide expectations, I guess.
Yeah, they did really have an I love you man moment, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
It did stick out.
Yeah, kind of arms wrapped around each other. And was it Spock was the first one to kind of come out and say, hey, wait a minute, we're being affected by the drugs? And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves in the plot. But that was interesting that Spock seemed to have a very pronounced reaction to the drug. But we'll get there in a little bit. I wanted to shift a little bit over to Nurse Chapel really gets a lot of screen time in this episode. And I found her to be really, I guess, high and low in this. There's some really strange, questionable things that I think they wrote for her in this one. And there was a couple of really good things that I thought they wrote. But overall, it was a very uneven feel. Specifically, there were some questionable decisions I thought they had her make. One specifically is that she is, the chief nurse. I mean, she's a medical professional with lots of working knowledge. And, after overhearing that the love crystals that Mudd was selling sickened an alien population of another planet that he sold them to, I thought it was kind of strange that she would risk using them on Spock, knowing that he's at least half non-human, and not knowing what the effect of it would be on him, regardless of how she felt about him. I thought that was kind of a strange thing for her. Ian, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, she was kind of all over the place in that, where at some points she would seem really on character, and then other points she would seem really out of character. And I don't know, maybe they're trying to give a message, like if I'm being generous here, like maybe they're trying to be trying to give a message of that's the allure of drugs, right? But that doesn't really hold up, if you spend more than a couple seconds thinking about it. So I don't know, it was really weird. And plus, points to her for thinking, yeah, you know what, I'll just go analyze this. And then somehow Mudd just convinces her, no, don't analyze it, just use it.
Try it out.
Yeah, it'll destroy it.
Yeah, and there was just, it was uneven.
Yeah, not to mention she accepts the crystal from him into her bare hand instead of some sort of a petri dish or a tweezer or something.
Yeah,
she
put
has
it
no
in a
idea.
Ziploc.
Yeah, really, come on. Use some sort of sample bag or something. But Heather, do you have any thoughts about the risk that she took using that drug on Spock, knowing that it had adverse effects on other aliens?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think about this stuff, guys, because they don't think about it. So
Yeah.
I don't have like these really insightful opinions about it. I felt like she was written by two different people. Sometimes we see the Christine that we know, like what is she like karate chopped
She's
at
the
one
Kirk
point?
chop, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. But yeah, it was just the parts where she was convinced to take the drug and everything else is just not who she is. And so I was really excited when I saw her and I was like, oh, great, another, main female lead. And then it was just terrible.
Yeah, it's no Lorelei signal.
No, they really, I mean, even when she was, assertive and badass, it wasn't enough to make this a good episode in any way.
Yeah, it was really weird that she comes up behind Mud, chops him, knocks him down, takes a shot at him with the phaser, and then is essentially overcome and knocked out by I don't know what. Like,
I don't either, but she just like lays into him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Like he just sort of walks up, and that's enough to disable her, I guess.
Yeah, these two versions don't go together for me, and I don't get it.
Yeah, and that, and coupled with her actions, down on the planet's surface after she's been kidnapped by Mud, taken down to the surface, Spock shows up and is in love with her because the drug is wrapping his arms around her, and she just seems to go with it, even though they're in a a disaster scenario.
Well, yeah,
Right.
because she loves him and her dreams have come true. That's what women do.
And it just seemed, I guess, I'm thinking about other episodes where, specifically What Are Little Girls Made Of, where, she had a real conflict in that episode, finding her long lost fiance and having to choose between, him and her duty to the captain and the crew of the Enterprise. And you could feel that in that episode. And I thought that was a really great character moment for her. And just to see her reduced to this was just off-putting.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was definitely. Well, we'll get to whether I find this episode essential or not, but you can probably gather at this point.
Well, we're getting there soon. I mean, I guess I can glean you guys' overall opinions of Chapel's representation. As you said, you think it's pretty uneven.
Oh, man. Well, at least as far as Chapel's characterization goes, there was no redeeming her like jumping on Spock's lap and then like, hanging off of him like down on the planet while these giant rock monsters are, threatening to kill everyone after they've just smashed an entire shuttlecraft. But there is, for me, some redemption in just like getting to, well, I guess you don't really see Roger Carmel as much as you hear him, but like just the return of him and someone who was just a really popular character from the original series. There's something to that, but the plot itself is also just kind of all over the place, right? They've gone to pick him up, and then there's that A plot of the love rocks, and then he takes the shuttle and leaves. Which, by the way, I will say I did love that panorama of the hangar bay.
Yes,
with all the shuttles lined up in that.
Yeah,
I always liked that. But
and we get to see that alternate shuttlecraft model from the inside.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Which was cool, but like, so he escapes and takes Chapel down to the planet, and like, what was his plan gonna be down there? Like, why, like, there's nothing down there. Is he just gonna like hang out and eat rocks? Like, why are they down there? I don't. There was just so much about the set.
He plays it off by saying, something to the effect of, an enterprising man like me can always find, business opportunities And then, Chapel calls him out and says, there's nobody here. And then, the rock monster opens its eye and,
Right.
But then again, you never know. Maybe he could have found a way to negotiate with the rock monsters. But speaking of the rock monsters, I have to say that was probably the high point for me for this episode, were those pretty cool looking rock monsters. In fact, I thought one of them looked quite a lot like a big stone Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, yeah,
Kind
the
of
one
had
with
the
3
same
eyes.
slug-like body with the little arms.
He was cuter than that.
Well, he had an extra eye. And big teeth. Jabba doesn't have big teeth, but I thought the two different rock monsters were pretty imaginative, and that's the kind of stuff I like to see in the animated series, is those types of things that we wouldn't see normally in a TOS episode. We've seen some cool ones in the comic books, though, Ian.
Very true. Very true. And I did love that. So the second rock monster it uses the sound effect, the same one that they used for Battle Cat in the old He-Man cartoon, which was also a Filmation.
Yeah, yep.
So it must have been like their, like from their library of sounds that they just went and dug that one out of.
Yeah, that one and that pterodactyl sound that always gets used.
Yep.
That's constant. We've heard that one in the animated series before too. I know that was in He-Man a bunch of times. Oh man. So speaking of risque stuff, what do you guys think of the Umres and Scotty romance that breaks out when the bridge is flooded with gas? Now, do you think it's more or less risque than the Kirk and Uhura kiss? You got interspecies romance going on here. Heather, were you amused by that?
I don't think it was anything all that special. I did notice that she doesn't purr.
No, not at all.
At all. So I was kind of glad that she wasn't just sex kitten Maress in this one. But I thought it was cute, but it's not something comparable, in my opinion, to Kirk and Uhura's kiss.
Well, how about Zephram Cochrane and the Companion, Ian? Is it comparable to that?
In how ham-fisted it is?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of an interspecies one to compare it to.
Yeah, it was a little weird. It was like she was basically just there to, suddenly turn around and notice Scotty for once. And I like Maress, and I, want to see her do more stuff, but not that kind of stuff. I'm not quite into furries, so.
She's the original one.
Yeah, it was really kind of uncomfortable to watch.
Did you guys pick up on the fact that the drug is advertised as you having to break the crystal onto your skin and then touch somebody else, but when it's airborne through the ship's air systems, which apparently must have no filtration at all, it just affects everybody?
Yeah, because it's just ingested.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So is it the first person you see, I guess, or the closest person is the one you fall in love with? The closest person of the opposite sex, rather?
Yeah, that's how it works.
Heather's got it figured out.
Just like in real life. Yeah, I did love how its effect on Eric's was to just make him want to sing and play music.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have the worst time because when he talks, all I can think of is James doing this high-pitched voice, and that's all I see in my head. But yeah, I like that about him. That was pretty cool. I'd like to get to know him better.
It's a shame that Uhura and Spock weren't there to also sing and play along with this little jam session on the bridge.
Yeah.
Would have been a lot of fun. But I love that you mentioned James Doohan doing the voice, because I always think of, whenever I hear Arex, I always think of James Doohan doing the Klingon voice from Captain Kirk. It's a horrible Klingon voice. But yeah, it's pretty much the same.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's also the two people dancing in the tricorder room.
That cracked me up. And not necessarily the dancing, but the music that they were piping in.
Yes.
Where did that come
from? Yeah, it was like kind of jazzy big band stuff. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, this episode definitely had kind of an out there vibe. I found Spock to be pretty humorous in this episode. and he didn't seem totally Spock even in the beginning. But it was funny. It was interesting.
Yeah, it was a little bit different. Spock in love than was it This Side of Paradise with the plants that shot the spores and made Spock fall in love. So it was a little bit different. This was a little more of like a possessive Spock in love.
Yeah.
The other one was more of like a hippie Spock in love, right? But yeah, this is an interesting interpretation of what Spock would be like.
Yeah, well, it was there was one thing that I just kept noticing, which was like every time Spock would smile, and it looked, we've seen Spock smile. We've, also seen Leonard Nimoy smile. It did not look like him at all. And it was just like, there was something about like the way that he looked when he smiled that was just like kind of an uncanny valley thing for me, that just like, oh, what is this?
That Sweet Christine part where he had his eyes closed. He's going, Sweet Christine. Yeah. That was, that totally, it's really weird. I don't know if it was the style of the way they drew the smile on his face, plus the way Nimoy was reciting the lines. It seemed like a kind of a combination of the two that made it awkward.
Yeah, it just took me right out.
Any
other observations, Heather, that you want to share about this episode as we're getting close to wrapping?
No, I don't think so. It just felt very strange, and it did not really feel like Star Trek to me.
Yeah, speaking of that, one other quick thing that just popped into my head was one thing that did flash me back to another Star Trek episode was McCoy under the effects of the drug, macking on that young ensign girl, the red skirted girl, reminded me so much of Shore Leave when he was talking to what's her name, Martine, down on the planet Surf, and he was trying to get his swerve on down there. It was very much the same feel. So I guess DeForest Kelley still had that down.
Yeah, I don't think it really took much for him to get back into that mode. All he has to do is just be McCoy bragging.
Ever tell you about the time I saved the whole ship?
Hell, I probably even saved you once. I just don't remember.
Ian, any other thoughts on this episode before we get to our essential voting?
Just one thing, which is that, like, I wonder if Gold Key took its cue for planet names from this episode.
Yeah, Planet Motherlode.
Right.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
What is that about?
And it's a mining planet.
Go figure. That's a little on the nose.
Yeah.
Still better than Planet Question Mark, though, Ian. I don't think they're going to get any worse.
There was a Planet Question Mark.
And Gold Key, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the earlier ones.
Did the Riddler live on it?
It was spelled out, too.
Now, that would have been cool. That
spelled out is question mark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was pretty bad. All right. Well, I guess if nobody has anything else they'd like to comment on for this one, I think we can go ahead and get to our essential votes. And Heather, you already kind of half flipped your cards, so why don't you jump in there? Is there anything that this episode adds to the Trek universe that you think is essential going forward?
No. I mean, it's as simple as that. Sorry. If you want to go watch something with mud in it, feel free, but this is by far the worst of it. So you can skip over this one, guys.
Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard because the fact that it's a sequel and it has mud, one of the very rare instances of a guest star with a voice, right? Like, but just the story is so forgettable, really. That I can't in good conscience give it an essential rating. Yeah,
I'm going to hold off on mine as I usually do to the end of the commentary section with Craig Cohen here coming up in a few minutes. But one thing I will say for sure is I agree with Heather. This is the worst of the three mud entries. I'm an iMud apologist. I absolutely love iMud. Not a big fan of Mud's women, but I really, really do like iMud. So this does not even come close to comparing. All right, so that wraps up our conversation section of this episode. Stay tuned for our commentary track coming up with Mr. Craig Cohen right now. Hey everybody, welcome to the commentary track for the animated series episode number 10, Mud's Passion. I'm Jeff Hewlett, and with me, as always, is Mr. Craig Cohen.
Hi, Jeff, and happy 2017. This is actually the first time we're talking in the new year.
Yeah, good point. I didn't even think about it. It's been a while since we did one of these, and it's always nice to get back together with you and talk through these animated series episodes. And we've been doing these commentary tracks for almost 4 years now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I still always think back on just our initial run of the the original series, including that original pilot, and I'm just still amazed at the the commitment we had, and also the quality of the product as well. It's something I'm very proud of.
Oh, me too. I originally we had thought that we were going to do just the original series and call it a day, and wound up we continued on and started doing animated series. And it's always really cool to sit down and look back at our catalog and realize just how long we've been at this, and the amount of commitment. I don't know if we both realized the level of commitment going into it, what it would turn out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, totally. I mean, I think sometimes if you think too much about it, you psych yourself out.
That's true.
Not to do it.
That is true. But yeah, and we in the meantime, we've also started up other projects too. So, and we've got our Slycast project, and we're part of Zilch the Monkeys podcast. You've got your other podcast that you're involved in, and it's God, there's just so much stuff that's come out of this show over the years. It's amazing, and here we are still putting these out. So, definitely a good start to the new year.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So, are you ready to jump into our commentary track for Mud's Passion?
Sir.
All right. So, as we always have done, we're going to give you guys out there in listener land a 3 count before we start so that you can synchronize your DVDs, Netflix, and now Blu-rays. I know animated series is out on Blu-ray now. So, you can sync these up with us at the end of our 3 count and listen to us talk along. So, go ahead and get your stuff queued up, and we're going to start our commentary track in 3, 2, 1. All right. Standard star feel as always.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I never get tired of this theme.
It's a great theme.
It really is. And, it bears mentioning, too, really quick while I have a second. Now, back in November, December timeframe, there actually was a 50th anniversary audio CD set that came out that had all of the music from the animated series on it.
Oh, wow.
So if you love the music from the animated series, there's a lot of other stuff on it too. But if you love the music from the animated series, seek that out and get a copy, because I have one and it sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. And you know what? I'd imagine if this series had been made a couple years later, or maybe a couple years before, they would have used the classic, original series music, and I bet you that this was more of probably like a rights issue or something like that.
Oh, more than likely. Yeah, they didn't want to pay to use the Alexander Courage theme song, but I actually kind of like the animated series intro theme. It's fun, and it's kind of 70s throwback.
Totally.
Yeah. So here we got Mud's Passion. Started 4978.5. Seems a little late.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're in an Arcadian star system. I don't know if I've ever heard of the Arcadian star system before.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting that Kirk refers to Mud as their friend with no hint of sarcasm.
Yeah, really.
Like, there's no, like, I don't know if Shatner just didn't know how to play that or what, but it just seemed to me like the line as written, it should have been like sarcastic, because Mud clearly wasn't their friend.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I was a little bit shocked. Well, we later on, when we get into the episode proper, we'll hear a little bit more about Mud and how he got where he is now, but it just seems strange to me that the Enterprise would be sent on a mission to find this guy. I mean, don't they have some, Federation security that can go track this guy down? You need to send the Federation flagship after him.
Yeah, it seems like almost a waste of resources. You've got this, this starship that, with an incredible, amount of talent on board.
Yeah, exactly. And he seems to be wasting their time. Now, on screen here, we're seeing Mud once again engaged in a swindling con. And I have to say, well, before we talk about the swindling con, I have to say it was really cool to see some of these like Wolfman-like aliens, one of which had a speaking part there for a second, which is kind of cool. It's one of those cool animated series things that we wouldn't have seen on the original series. I really, really enjoy that. But at the same time,
and
Craig, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go for it.
I was just going to say I'm a little disappointed that they went with another love potion type con with Mud. I mean, I really loved what they did with iMud and him trying to have like a little clone army or a robot clone army that would, help him take over whatever he wanted. But here he is again with some phony baloney, money making scheme. I mean, wouldn't his ambitions be bigger than this?
Yeah, and he always seems to just pick on the sort of blue collar.
Yeah. What's up with miners? Why does he keep going after miners?
Yeah.
Oh, and what setting was Spock's phaser on right there?
It was on the reveal shapeshifter setting.
All right, it was. I'm thinking it definitely wasn't stunned because that lizard wasn't stunned, and definitely wasn't kill.
Mm-hmm. So, now, is that the first instance of a shapeshifter too on the series?
No, we had the survivor.
Oh,
had the tentacle guy was a shapeshifter.
Oh yeah. No, that was the whole plot of that episode.
Yeah. Now this seems like an extreme reaction from Spock here, digging a huge trench with his phaser.
Yeah.
Couldn't they have just beamed out of there? I don't think they needed to get that extreme with it.
Yeah, but it almost seems like it could possibly be a violation of the Prime Directive.
Oh, potentially true. Well, because we found out that it was not a Federation planet, which was actually kind of a smart move on Mud's part, going to a non-Federation affiliated planet that on which the laws of the Federation didn't apply. So technically, they shouldn't have been able to arrest him for that.
Right. And I don't think it's actually mentioned during the episode or in the credits, but we've actually got Roger Carmel back doing the voice of Mud.
Yes, that was a very cool part. And the animated series has this happen a couple times with guest actors returning, which I love that they come back and although the depiction of Mud here, I think, is not exactly up to snuff. I think he doesn't look exactly like he did on the show, on the original series, but it's close enough.
Yeah, I think maybe the artists were going from memory. They watched the original series episode maybe, or remembered watching the original series episodes and maybe had a publicity photo of Roger Carmel and were like, okay, we got it.
Potentially. But, well, I really do like that they kind of have a tie back to iMud here, though. Mm-hmm. That's really cool because they mention how he got away, and well, he says he borrowed a vehicle, and Spock says he stole a vehicle. But at any rate, it's cool that they acknowledge the fact that they thought they left him on that robot planet.
Yeah. Now do you think in an alternate universe you would have liked to have seen more of these episodes that sort of revisited characters or locations that we've seen before?
Most certainly. That's something I really like about the animated series is some of the continuations that they were able to pull off. And I'm kind of hoping that some of our future Star Trek series that are supposed to be starting up soon give us some kind of more follow-up, since it's supposed to happen after the original series.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about, that Batman 66 movie that came out a couple months ago where they got Adam West and Burt Ward. And they sort of did a Batman, that, exists in that 1966 universe. And, sadly, we've lost so many of the original series cast members. But I really wonder if anybody's toyed with the idea of sort of resurrecting that original series cast in animated form. Because it seems like in terms of Star Trek, you never really beat that nostalgia trip of, I guess Next Generation or original series at this point. And, with the success of Batman 66, I'm wondering if anybody sat up and sort of, took notice or even what the legalities would be with, I guess dealing with so many different estates.
True. Well, I guess we'll find out in the near future, hopefully, when the new series launches. But so I clearly Mud was saying that he doesn't have any more of these crystals on him and he had to go back to his ship to get them. But here he is with these crystals in his hand. Obviously, they didn't search him well.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, and it doesn't put me, I don't put it past him to, to pull that off.
Oh, of course. Of course. But, well, this is another thing that I thought was a little bit strange, but he goes to the lengths to explain that the potion is very specific. And if it's a man and a man, they're just friends. If it's a woman and a woman, they're just friends. But if you're a man and a woman, then you're in love. So I guess, gays and lesbians, you're out of luck with this pill, with this crystal. Yeah. So you're not going to get your the person you're crushing on if they're the same sex. That won't work for you.
Yeah, maybe there's a specialty variant of that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's another market for maybe that Mud didn't feel like exploring. But I do like that this sort of callback, if you will, to the relationship between Spock and Nurse Chapel, and how she sort of always kind of pined for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like that they tied that back too. So, I mean, you've got two really good ties. You've got the tie to iMud, and you've got the tie to the Spock and Chapel, which actually wasn't that big of a deal later on in the original series. It was a little bit more towards the beginning, in the middle of the original series. So that was kind of written out, more or less. But, another thing that kind of bugs me a little bit here is that Chapel is a trained doctor and scientist. Why did she not have that thing like in a petri dish or some tweezers? I mean, she just took it right into her hand. I mean, she doesn't know what Mud's handing her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit put off by her gullibility in this episode. I feel like Nurse Chapel would be a little smarter than this. I mean, the only time we saw her kind of under the charms of a man in the original series was when she found her long lost fiance in What Are Little Girls Made Of.
Right.
And there was a conflict there, and you could feel the conflict and you could understand the conflict. But I have a feeling that she would more easily put her duty over this potential crush on Spock and not trust Harry Mudd.
Yeah, I think we just have to chalk it up to a moment of weakness. And also here we get that ID card.
Yeah, what's up with this? We've never seen an ID card before, and why would he bother taking the picture off but not the name?
Yeah, like obviously the ship's computers aren't scanning the photograph, or if they are, they're not cross-referencing with the name.
No, not at all. I mean, you would think it would have some sort of identity chip on the card or something, but
and it's not like it's a card that they display or they wear.
No, not at all. In fact, I don't think we've ever seen an identity card like that before in any Star Trek series. But I don't know if we see one again either. I don't recall seeing one after this.
No.
In these episodes. But yeah, and I guess this is another thing that bothers me a little bit about Nurse Chapel attempting to use this thing. I mean, we heard earlier on that Mudd had sold it to a bunch of aliens on another planet, and they all got sick off of it.
Right.
Now, you would think Nurse Chapel, as a physician, would think, wait a minute, Spock is half Vulcan. This pill may make him sick.
Yes.
Doesn't even think about it. Just goes through and does it anyway. And it seems very out of character for Nurse Chapel to me.
Yeah, I think we have to do a whole bunch of sort of plot convenience, decision points with her on this episode.
I agree. And here we see is a delayed reaction on Spock's part. But I do kind of like the fact that Nimoy gets to do some of these more emotive lines. Oh, yeah. Great Kirk karate chop by Chapel there. Obviously, she's gone to the James T. Kirk School of Self-Defense.
Yeah, and I also liked in that previous scene Spock's emotions on his face. I think the animators did a really good job of capturing the emotion in Spock with not as much detail to work with.
I agree. There's a very simple figures, but it's cool that they were able to capture Spock closing his eyes and smiling a little bit there, giving us a visual indicator of the pill actually working and what his feelings are. But this scene is a little bit awkward to me too. I feel like, Chapel could have just easily stunned him at any second. They didn't need to do all this dialogue here.
Yeah.
Just stun him, put him back in the brig and call it a day. And I mean, how bad of a shot does she have to be to actually miss him? This is practically point blank range.
Yeah. Well, those days where she was going to the Captain Kirk School of Judo, she might have also been attending classes with Greedo from Star Wars.
There you
on how to shoot.
go. Good point. See, and he kind of bull charges her, and I don't understand how he knocks her out.
Yeah. He's got some kind of it looks like an elbow nerve pinch, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about, and I guess I should probably stop picking this thing apart. But there are just some things that made me shrug my shoulders, and I love the fact that Arex whistles. I love the bridge crew's reaction to Spock showing emotion.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I think you're sort of, putting a spotlight on is, the limitations of sort of a 30-minute running time.
True.
Before commercials, but then also the audience, where I think airing on Saturday mornings, they knew that they could get away with a little bit more and didn't have to, sort of explain away some what
True.
we consider plot holes.
Agreed. I am taking it out of the context in which it was originally aired and intended. So
yeah, but I mean, I'm not saying that it should be forgiven, but you definitely understand it.
Yeah, I do like that Kirk is making what I think is a good decision, and instead of trying to restrain Spock or put him in a sick bay, knowing Spock's strength and cunning. Instead, he decides, I'm just going to accompany him down to the planet and try to rescue Christine. So, technical question, though. Now, does the Enterprise ventilation system have no filtration built in? So, essentially, something that gets sucked into the return in the shuttle bay can wind up coming out of the output on the bridge.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think, if anything, the bridge would really have its own isolated source.
Yes, agreed. Cool thing about this episode that I really do like is that they're not using the Galileo as the shuttlecraft, and we get to see the inside of this alternate shuttlecraft.
Yeah,
that we haven't seen before. This is a different model, as we've seen from the outside. The nacelles are sort of on the side, and it has these other I don't know what they are hanging off the bottom of it, but it's a different design than the shuttlecrafts that we've come to know and love over the years of the original series. And even in the animated series, we've seen the Galileo used again. So, and in Gold Key Comics, we've seen the Galileo used.
Oh, yeah.
So, interesting. And I guess we're seeing the bridge crew is now under the effects of the love potion, although they haven't touched each other, which was supposed to be a requirement. And now, is this more risque? Is an interspecies love moment right there with Scotty and Umres more risque or less than the Kirk and Uhura kiss?
Oh man, I've got to say that I think based on the social situation at the time, that the Kirk Uhura kiss was probably a little bit more risque.
Probably. But interspecies, I mean, that's kind of pushing it. Well, Star Trek pushing the boundaries, as always.
And that did feel like sort of a nice sort of original series, scenario that I think would have really, really worked well live action, is to see, the cast interact like that.
Well, maybe we'll see that on the new series.
Yeah, well, I guess also on the original series, you wouldn't have really had many key female actors to utilize, unless you brought back a lot of the guest stars, who were crew members.
True, you really only had Uhura and occasionally Nurse Chapel. But I love that Arex is also a musician. So now we have 3 musicians on the ship. We've got Spock, Uhura, and Arex.
And I love how he keeps his instrument on the bridge ready to go. You never know when you might need it.
Yeah, and you have to be one of Arex's species to play that instrument, because it's probably got about 50 strings on it. So he needs 2 hands.
Yeah, and here's some of that, I guess, heterosexual,
friendship,
platonic bonding.
Oh man,
But it's funny because you don't think that Kirk and Spock need that,
no,
to express their friendship for each other.
not at all. Well, Spock would need it for the emotional part of that display. Now, here's probably my favorite part of this entire episode:
I love this rock
gigantic Jabba the Hutt rock monster. He looks like a giant rock Jabba the Hutt, doesn't he?
Yeah, and you know what? I think about Star Trek V and the rock monsters that Kirk Shatner wanted to utilize. Yep. Man, this would have been a perfect template.
Absolutely, it looks like a giant slug.
Yeah.
With 3 eyes, but he's really cool looking. I have to say, for the amount of criticism that this show gets for the quality of the animation, I think those rock monsters look pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, they look a little bit more sophisticated. Oh God, this cracks me up. I laughed so hard the first time I saw that transporter room scene with the two technicians dancing to that piped-in music.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I think everybody on the Enterprise right now is in a court-martial situation.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh, too funny.
Poor thing. And we neglected to mention also that the poor shuttlecraft once again got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So it joined the ranks of the Galileo many times over. Yeah, we have another destroyed shuttlecraft. Shame. So Spock is able to see through the drug as he sees through many different things over the course of the many different series and episodes that says, by the way, the drug is... And I love that Harry Mudd is surprised that the drug actually works.
Yeah.
You think he would have seen evidence of this prior because he's been talking about the fact that he's sold it to other races and people in the past.
Right.
So you'd think he would know. That would probably work. I love that McCoy mentions Uhura, but she's not actually in this episode.
Yeah.
But McCoy's pretty smooth here.
Yeah.
He is pretty smooth putting this the moves on this unnamed red-skirted ensign. But strange that Harry Mudd... So we get the expose here that Harry Mudd actually got these crystals from what he calls a creature.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I guess he got only a finite amount as well. This isn't something that he could recreate or get more of, because as we'll find out here in a second, he's only got 2 pills left.
Yeah. I think if you gave him enough time, though, he'd find a way to replicate it. Maybe put it inside of a tribble.
Ah, there you go. I wonder what would happen if you took the crystal and then you touched a tribble.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy. You'd be stuck to that tribble for life. Look at Arex with his 3rd leg crossed across the other 2. You ever wonder how someone with 3 legs crosses their legs?
Oh.
Now you know. Now you know. So apparently this drug wears off much faster on the bridge crew.
Mm-hmm.
Than it does on others. Like Spock and Chapel are still, even though they were the first ones to be affected by it, they're still under the effects of it, while the bridge crew was only affected for a minute or 2 or 3.
Yeah, maybe the bridge actually did have a filtration system, or it just wasn't strong enough to completely counteract the effects.
Oh, good call. Good call. Nice. But and I have to say that I believe very strongly that Lieutenant Mress should be court-martialed for her response to that emergency beam-out request. Why would you respond verbally to an emergency beam-out request? Wouldn't you emergency beam them out immediately?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Enterprise here. No, it's an emergency beam-out request.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's an emergency. So what exactly happened to these creatures, these rock creatures, when the pills were ingested? You see Kirk and company start to smile as if the pills were having their intended effect, but when in fact these creatures are becoming extremely violent.
Right.
They're not loving each other. They're trying to kill each other. And now Kirk and company may be collateral damage.
Mm-hmm. Unless that's the mating ritual of that rock creature.
Oh.
But still, how would Kirk and company know that?
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
I like this concept too of the dilithium crystals that were procured with fake Federation credentials.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I find it very fascinating that Mudd is just sitting here confessing to crime after crime after crime to Nurse Chapel. You think they made him take his own love pills and fall in love with Chapel so that he would divulge all of his secrets?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, who knows? But so Mudd seems to think he's going to get rehabilitation therapy again, which obviously wasn't very effective the first time.
Nope.
Or any of the subsequent times. I guess he's had it maybe multiple times. But bizarre ending to this episode, and kind of a foreboding, foreshadow that Mudd may return again in the future. Like they wanted to leave it open.
Yeah.
With Mudd referring to the Enterprise crew as his loved ones and saying that he's going to miss them.
Yeah, I'm surprised that, or maybe if it was more successful, we would have gotten a Mudd spin-off animated series.
Oh, there you go. Maybe that's what they were planning. Well, we're at the end credit roll, and that means it's time for our essential voting. And why don't you take the helm?
Okay, yeah, I think in terms of the animated series, I would consider this an essential episode for a couple reasons. I mean, we get the return of a classic original series character, and we also get introduced to a bunch of new species, and we also get the concept of the ID card.
Agreed. I'm going to throw out. So you're giving an essential?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out the fact that Mudd returns in this episode because I feel it's kind of almost a recycled story in a way. With the the Mudd's women plot line with Venus Drug, but that I don't think is going to take away from the fact that there are a couple things in this episode that could make it essential. Like you said, one is that ID card that Chapel had. I thought that's pretty fascinating. And I love the fact that you get to see the interior of this different model of shuttlecraft. I thought that was really cool. So this is not something that the animators just looked up some reference shots of and recreated it. This is something that they had to invent. So they're inventing some new canon here. With this different model of shuttlecraft and the interior of it. So pretty cool. And of course, those interesting aliens at the beginning, even though we don't get to know what they are, they don't tell us what the species are, it was kind of cool to see a couple new alien races kind of thrown in there at the beginning. So I guess this is a double essential. And as we round out, Heather, where can people find you online?
Okay, so on Twitter, you can find me at Sketching Venus, and on Facebook, Jeff and I both moderate the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group. You can find us there, and you can find me, but if you add me as a friend, please send me a message so that I know who you are.
Ian, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ian128K as in kilo, and that's pretty much it. I've kind of been avoiding Facebook lately, so I'm pretty much just on Twitter these days.
That brings us to the end of another episode of the Tricorder Transmissions. Thanks as always for listening. You can find us online at www.thetricordertransmissions.com, facebook.com/thetricordertransmissions, and on Twitter at @TTT_pod. We'll see you next time.